tell me I'm not tripping out, alright? What planet is this? Can you see this in the reflection of my window? Here's the glare once again. It's bouncing around, full circle. And then we stop, and there's this circular thing above the sun. Mercury, it could be the moon, shadow, but when I zoom in, it looks like another sun, straight up. See the fog, you see the sunset. I can tone it all as down as I can. Zoom in. While we're watching Interstellar. And you can clearly see it through my tinted windows that there's something else there.
People out there, Sunday morning, I woke up and I feel good. I hope you do the same. Anyways, we're in Arnprior, southeast, 140 degrees facing southeast. And I got this set up. I want to show you how I found this. So now that you see where I'm at, I got it blown up to 200. I'm just going to walk through some of these. Be patient with me this morning. I'm waking up, drinking my coffee. Okay, get your coffee, guys. This was the first clue that there's something in the sky. So I thought, well, this one's probably dirt. I don't know. But I'm thinking like you guys. That's a bug, or that's dirt. There's something down here, and I don't know, but that's not what I'm going to show you. Look at the pink. You see the pink? Something's right here. So I said, okay. I went to 4 cameras, and everything facing southeast indicated that something was out there. So I said, okay, let me watch carefully on the southeast cameras. So I started going from southeast to southeast, and after 4 cameras, this is what I found. All right, now I knew there was something. I blew it up, and there you go. My granddaughter said, there it is. Grandpa, there it is. Okay, so anyways, so you could set this thing at a start. When you go to your camera, you can set it as a start right there, and I'm right there. So I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to go and talk about it a little bit. Here we go. You can slow it down a little bit as you go. See how it got bright? Watch right over here. It passes it. There it is. Boom. Amazing. And that one's pretty much there all the time, so I keep thinking it's dirt, but I keep testing it. It's not dirt. See, no dirt. Right there, no dirt. Anyways, I thought you guys would enjoy seeing this first thing in the morning, and I went ahead and checked it out. And I'm going to do it by hand right now. Okay, you see right here? It's hiding between the clouds. That's still there. That might be dirt, and that down there might be something. But this is what I'm interested in right here. Okay, as we proceed. Anyways, I found this video out there, and a lady did a beaver moon shot, and it literally looked like the sun was up in the middle of the night. It was amazing. So as we go along, you see nothing here. They hide it with the clouds. They have the ability to move these clouds over pretty quick, but then all of a sudden the clouds disappear, and when you get a shot like that, that's the sun simulator being turned all the way up so it could hide it. But they usually can't maintain it. Right over here, you see that purple? See, the purple still indicates that it's there. So as I went through it, there's a little shadow right there. Okay, it's on top of it right now, but usually will come out on these kind of shots on the other side. So that's what I'm going to show you. So how was your weekend going? I hope it's going good. I put up a video that was pretty intense, a Watchman's Cry. If you haven't seen it, it's my last video. It's Misty Edwards doing a spontaneous cry for the Watchman. I separated it from all the other stuff and just took the clip on the cry and added it to the sun pictures. If you haven't seen it, you need to go look at it. Some people are wondering, do you have to talk about Jesus every time? I have to talk about Jesus every time, guys. I really do. And here we go. Because, see, God's the creator of all these planets. Even this system coming in, and he used it back in Moses' day. He also used it back in Noah's day. And I'm not going to sit here and try to prove it doctrinally, but if you read your Bible, you see what happened. You could actually see it. And if you go to Revelations 8 and 9 and read that, you'll see the whole polar shift taking place. It says the islands and the mountains will move out of their spots. The earth will shake like a drunken sailor. Basically like a drunk. See that, guys? No dirt. Let me go back up here. See that? Proof that there's something in the sky with that bright sun simulator. I just thought you guys would enjoy this for breakfast. You Nibiru hunters or watchers. Some of you guys are watchers. Some of you guys send me pictures. If you want to send me pictures, I'll take them and put them up. My address is NibiruWatching2017@gmail.com. NibiruWatching2017@gmail.com. Send me pictures. I'll put a show together, talk about it, talk about your name if you want me to. But I'm looking for pictures. I usually just go out and find great pictures, but I know some of you are sending me some awesome pictures I'm going to do shows on. Look at that, guys. If that's not a planet, I'll eat my hat, and I don't wear one. I'll eat my wife's hat. See. Now, do you think that is before the sun or behind the sun? Personally, I think it's one of the planets of Nemesis system. It's pretty obvious, right? I'm just kind of flicking back and forth. See how the sun just blares on it right there? Wow. That's an amazing shot. So I'm just flipping around here. Anyways, I'm going to cut this video short. I'm going to go find something else. I'll talk to you later. Comment. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now. Go ahead and click the crown. There's a little one, purple crown, and there's a large purple crown. Either one will give you access to becoming a subscriber. Alright, I'll talk to you in a little bit. I'm going to go find something even better. Have a good Sunday if I don't hear from you, if I don't see you, if you don't come back ever. You've seen it here at C Fernald channel. Have a great Sunday. Rest. Bye.
Alien talk. It is absolutely 100% ridiculous when mankind does enough damage for itself. Listen to me close. Mankind does not have the power to destroy the earth, okay? But they can certainly destroy each other. Demons work through people to accomplish something. There's no ET. All this alien stuff is just diverting people. And what it's doing is it's training people to allow any spirit into their lives. It's not about aliens. It's about a person inviting demons into their lives. That's what it's about. This world will turn upside down in two ways: psychologically and physically, because the rotation of the earth is going back to what it would be. They know the rotation of the earth has changed every time the cycle comes. And I think we're months away from the end of the down curve to the cycle we're in. Right when we hit the bottom, that's when everything goes berserk. That's why they're telling people about these new planets. Oh, they find, you know what, it's so, you can't really trust science either. They reportedly find one planet, then they lose it. How do you lose a planet? Because they made it up. And it's really becoming laughable. They're making up stuff, telling the public about all these different things. But I'll tell you this about the heavens. When the red dust begins to fall, what you better do is understand that that is the beginning of the end of everything that you knew. When that red dust comes, when it settles upon the water, when it covers the moon, and the moon turns red, you better know that is the beginning of the end. Not the end of the world, but the end of things that you knew. You better start walking spiritually today, that when that day comes, you'll be okay. You don't know if you have months left. Let me tell you how fast it can get here. Can I tell you how fast it can get here? We could be here today talking on air, and that red dust could begin to fall tomorrow. Do you know why? Because it's a matter of almost like fluid dynamics. Certain parts of celestial mechanics. A lot of static involved, electronic discharges. But it's traveling so fast, it could be here upon us before anybody can notice it was even traveling. We know that we live in the time because 5 asteroids have been determined with the same material they dug up. Listen to what they've been doing. These archaeologists have been digging up dust and materials. So we send all these probes out in space, trying to read the debris of a tale of what's really passing, while they woo and awe you with things that are passing the earth in the public's eye. So they're matching up what rock goes with what, so they can find the cycles of when the surface of this planet cracks up. And they found their matches. 35 specimens. 35 samples matched with 35 known objects and dust trails they found in space. They can, through the real type of time measurements, not carbon dating, that is absolutely ridiculous. They can now find out when it's coming back. Let me give an example. Apophis goes by us, listen to this, Apophis goes by us in 2029, correct? Why does it come back 7 years later? It's not coming around until 2029. That's more than 7 years. But when it passes us, it's coming back 7 years later. Do you guys understand me? They quit talking about Apophis because it probably will hit us in 2036. I would go so far as to say it will hit us. It will hit us. All right? But it's coming back 7 years later. So what does that tell you? All this stuff on the internet that you read about the orbits of comets and things of that nature. And they tell you, well, it comes back every 3,500 years. That's hogwash. Why does Apophis go by in 2029 and then 7 years later it comes back? All this talk about these cycles that they have told the public, that they have set people strategically out there to leak a story. Listen, you want to make sure you get a lie into the public venue. then call a story a leak. Everybody runs away with it. Or say somebody died to get this information out. See, what I'm telling you is that you can hardly trust what's out there. But you can see, you'll be able to see that red dust. You're going to be able to see it. You'll understand what a meteor storm is. All right? You're going to see things hitting the earth. And when the great hail begins to form, you'll know that the forces that have held so many things together for so long are out of whack, because physics will break down. You guys are going to experience strange problems, electronic phenomena you've never experienced before. I'm giving you signs that you can see for yourselves for what's happening. Listen, any demonic entity affects electronics. It's pure and simple. With electronic phenomena, you know you have a demon present or spiritual energy is high. You'll notice that too, weird things happening. But in the skies, you're going to notice a hue. You're also going to be aware that something has happened to the plant life. The plant life is not going to be like it used to be. Many trees are going to die. Listen to me. Many trees will die, and not from insects. They're going to die. Plant life is going to begin to die. All right? You're going to be able to see this with your own eye. No, they're not going to discuss this because it sounds stupid, just to be honest with you. I'm showing you things you're going to see with your own eye. That will be your proof. If you have to see something, that will be your proof. Even now as we speak, forces are exponentially increasing upon the face of the earth. Not gradually, exponentially. Do you know what that means? Magma is on the move under the crust of the earth like you wouldn't believe. It's only a matter of time, of days, until a big poofy explosion. I mean a big magma explosion. The oceans in the South Atlantic and South Pacific, life is going to die there. Get ready for more lobster floating up to the surface, fully cooked. I bet you could reach down there and just eat it yourself, crack it open and eat it, right? It's funny, don't let them beguile you either. You see, while everybody is looking, it is not what you see that can hurt you so much as the things you don't know about and can't see. Most of the volcanoes of the earth are under the ocean. They are not on land. How many of you know that? Have you guys ever investigated the volcanic activity underneath the ocean? That's where most of the horror stories are, under the ocean. Under the ocean. And we're not talking about just, have you guys ever heard of a black volcano? Not because it is black, it's because it oozes out carbon. Black stuff comes out of it. Well, they have other volcanoes where nickel comes out of it. All sorts of things. Now, what is this going to do? Well, let me tell you, let me give you this. As this continues, we have stuff going into the atmosphere. You may know it or have heard about it as climate change. Do you know why climate change is very important? Because it's happening solar system wide. They're having climate change on Mars. In the last 14 years, everything has been heating up, but on Mars and Venus, it's really heating up. I mean, for goodness sakes, you got water trickling down off of certain places in Mars. And the Earth, too, in a like manner, is doing the same thing. And the tilt of Mars is changing, and the Earth is about to get ripped. Listen, the Earth will get jerked in a 2-degree change in its axis. Now, just think of that. Think of a 2-degree change in the axis of Earth in less than 1 minute. You know what happened with that? It's called a double wobble. It wobbles already. But there will be a wobble within a wobble. And the internal wobble is going to be rough and continuous, and it's not going to stop. People are going to be sick for days on end. It's going to feel like you're seasick on the surface of the Earth. You know that happens, it's happening right now to Jupiter on double wobble. It came from the outside coming in. That's why they were in a rush to go take pictures of Pluto. Not because, ooh, let's see what's on there. They didn't want to know that. They can see Pluto and the forces acting upon Pluto from all the way here on Earth. But that's not what they're looking for. They were not looking for the beautiful colors on Pluto. They wanted to see if there were, they have different sensors on what passed Pluto. All right? They showed you the pictures. They're not concerned about the pictures they showed everybody else. They want the magnetic data that came back from the probe. That's what they want. They're not concerned about the pictures on Mars either. They really don't care what's on the surface of Mars. They want to know what happens to it because it is our warning that we're next. You see, when something happens to Mars, we have about 96 hours before we endure the same thing. So why wouldn't you invest money and put probes all over Mars? That's our early warning system. Then you have other probes that are closer to the sun, right? You have to have those there because the sun has a bad habit of shooting out these magnetic vortices that nobody ever talks about. Huge magnetic, we're not talking about a flare or anything else. We're talking about a magnetic vortice, which can actually affect our magneto. If one is pointed in our direction, you will not see it. But guess what happens? The sun will turn red just by the photons being dragged in different directions. Light will appear to have changed from the sun. And then it's going to grow a tail. I wonder what the explanation is going to be with that. When the sun grows a tail. When its sister, I guess you'd call it. When those forces begin to act and all the sun's particles begin to drift out to a certain location. I wonder what they're going to say. It's going to look like a teardrop. What would you do if you saw the sun as a teardrop? Of course, you'd have to have some magnificent shades because it's going to be extremely bright, and then all of a sudden, poof, it'll put out a greater amount of heat, but not the photons. The photons will be redirected to something else. I wonder what people will do, and it will have no light till the second object passes. It will have zero light. You see, when you live in a binary system, when the cold star, I'm just saying cold, when the cold star gets near the one with all the energy, it begins to feed off of the one with the energy. How many of you knew that? Nobody out there studies cosmology? So it takes all the active components, the photons, all the light and heavy particles, the fuel and everything else, and it sucks it into itself. It kind of refuels, right? What is that called? That means the sun is going to go black. It'll go black, but it's going to be twice as hot. They lied to people about an ice age. Let me tell you about this ice age garbage that they put out. In the North Atlantic Ocean, right? You've heard of the Gulf Stream. People said, well, the Gulf Stream has stopped. And some people say, well, the Gulf Stream is still going. I know for a fact the Gulf Stream has not stopped. I know that for a fact. There are sensors in the ocean. You interpret the data and the Gulf Stream has not stopped. Something else has happened, though. You see, hot water flows on the surface of the ocean, right? It will evaporate, losing what it will do is lose some of its content, and it begins to sink. That water begins to sink at a rate of, I don't know, so many feet per second, which causes the currents in the ocean, right? The cold water is down at the base of the ocean. The hot currents are at the top of the ocean. And salinity is very important. The content, right, of the water is very important. The salt content and everything else. So fresh water at one point stalled this North Atlantic flow, causing Europe to freeze. Europe froze to pieces, right? And that was caused through the melting of the end of the last glacier age. If you look at a weather map on infrared and you see the cloud formations, you're going to notice in the South Pacific Oceans, there's a stalled system that's constantly evaporating. Clouds are coming from this area. Certain parts in the North Pacific, likewise, you'll see the same. But the North Atlantic Ocean, you're going to see the flow of clouds in a certain pattern, right? A certain pattern. And as the South Atlantic and the Indian Ocean begin to heat up, that's what causes these storm drivers that hit Florida and things of that nature, right? But something else is happening. Everybody's worried about the hot water not being hot anymore. It's going to be cooled off. But what happens when it gets too hot, ladies and gentlemen? What happens? The cold water at the bottom is going to begin to heat up. And guess what happens? It interrupts the return stream. It causes a superheating event. And that's through volcanism. And then when that happens, the jet stream is affected. And then when that happens, you have massive turbulence in the jet stream. And then when that takes place, the current drivers in the southern hemisphere of the Earth overwhelm the flow of all the oceans. The jet stream reverses. The currents begin to change. They do something weird. Ocean life begins to die. All because of volcanism. Not because of your cars or cow farts. Nothing to do with that. The same process is also happening to other planets. What do we see here? We see an increased energy activity inside the Earth. We see increased energy activity inside the Sun. We see increased magnetic energies. You see, Mars is a very weak magnetosphere. So why is it strengthening? Because something is activating the components inside of Mars. What I'm saying is this: something is irradiating the core, the planets. Radiation is pouring into the Earth right now. It's pouring into the Earth. Radiation is pouring in to Mars, to the core of the planet. Radiation is certainly pouring into Venus. Where is it coming from? Where is this radiation coming from? From something approaching. We're dealing with greater and greater amounts of radiation. Greater and greater amounts of radiation. Radiation is energy. You know what? If you have a pot that's not boiling in a pressure cooker, you have no problems if the seal is not right. Right? You turn your eye up just a little bit more. What that is you're introducing more and more radiation in the way of heat to that water, causing it to boil. Now, when it won't boil under massive amounts of pressure, it becomes superheated. Then if you allow oxygen to come in there, then for poof, right? Something's going to go wrong. In like manner, something's happening like that to the Earth. That's why magma is on the move like you've never seen before. Some of the conduits that would stretch 200 kilometers, right, down to the source of where magma's normally generated, things of that nature, they too were on a cycle, kind of like the ocean currents. They too have a current, a cooling and a heating type current, cold and hot, right? Of course, you can't call magma cold. You can call it hot. But you had these cooler regions that was solidified back in the rock. What's happening is, it's not cooling. It's heating up. So the rock is disappearing. That's the only thing holding Yellowstone from going kapow. Right? It's the only thing holding Yellowstone back from doing that is that the rock is solidifying. But we have a problem. It's too much energy. Too much heat. The heat factor is going up inside the Earth by external forces, which means nobody can do anything about it. It's coming from out there. And what's happening is that our magnetosphere allows photons to enter into to the surface of the Earth harmlessly. You know, that infrared energy is why you feel the heat of the sun. But it blocks ultraviolet, so does our atmosphere and everything else. But what's happening is, through atmospheric compression and changes in our magnetosphere, charged particles are coming in to the surface of the Earth, and they go right through the surface into the core, where they're already, they're just activating the core of the Earth. I mean, making it hyper, like somebody needs to get the core of the Earth some Ritalin to, slow down. But this is a process this Earth has undergone. They won't tell you this. This has happened before. More and more cosmic rays are coming in and heating up the Earth from the inside out. That's going to cause volcanism. It's going to cause a type of swelling, right? They tell you that we have sinkholes because the water is gone and people dug out too much salt. Well, the water is leaving. What happens when magma is flowing under a big circle of water in the earth? Does not the water begin to evaporate? It can sometimes even go through a chemical change also. The components in the water can go through a chemical change, and now you have superheated liquid. That happens deep down in the earth. You can scarcely call it water. You can call it superheated liquid. And if it's ever exposed to oxygen, because most of the oxygen is burned off, so how can you call it water, H2O? I mean, some really weird things that have been happening underneath the crust of the earth. No one needs to talk about it because you can't go and investigate it. But it's going to become obvious to the point where our oceans, because has anybody ever heard that the oceans will boil? Have you ever heard that? The oceans will boil. What could cause the oceans to boil? What could do that? I'll tell you what can do that. A change in the atmosphere. If something happens to our atmosphere, in less than 2 minutes, the ocean water will begin to boil. If it happens slowly, nobody's going to live on the coasts. No one. And guess what? It's happening slowly. So it's going to be very difficult to breathe on the coasts. It's coming. It's coming. Climate changes, the real type climate changes, spiritual endurance that we have to have, physical changes we're going to feel in our body, emotional changes inspired by the loosening of more and more demons because mankind is inviting them, materialistic destruction, a phenomenon that the Lord's going to do for us and against the world, right? So we have to deal with quite a bit, a lot. But the changes in the crust of the earth will happen at the probably one thing that's going to startle most people, capture their attention, is the overwhelming increase in meteor storms. Now, I have really put forth an effort to warn people of meteor storms that are coming, to make them aware that meteor storms are coming to this earth. Well, now they're going to have to just experience the meteor storms, the crustal displacements, and things of that nature. So guess what? We have to prepare our souls in truth because the change is at hand. And I'll tell you again, August, October 2017, that's your true time. You need to prepare in everything. Listen, everything up to that time. I know the second wave is coming in 302 days. It's going to be 500 times stronger than the first one. And if you go back on the instruments, you'll see the impact of the first one. You'll hear the stories about the electronic phenomena that took place in space. You'll notice that the sun also reacted as soon as it got in here, and that was very minute. This one's 500 times the magnitude of the first one. And that's in late December it hits. But your true preparation, because nobody knows what that's going to do, but your true preparation spiritually, and the end of that thing is 2017 is a harsh decision you're going to have to make, which means every hour counts. And you're going to see changes in the coming days, weeks, and months like you wouldn't believe. In the coming days, some of you may have to look 3 times because the world is going berserk. Wouldn't it be sad? Is this a sad thought or what? Imagine yourselves in your house. The Lord comes to you and he says, child, stay in the kingdom because this house is going to need you. So the first 6 weeks you're in the kingdom, you're doing everything. A year later, guess what happens to you? You say, well, nothing bad is happening. Then you start slipping up, doing things in the world. And when you do that, sure enough, calamity comes to your home. The whole house is torn apart. And then you say, well, Lord, you didn't warn me. And he'll say, yes, I did. This is how it's going to be with a lot of Christians in the United States of America and abroad all around this world when they start giving up left and right. They're going to say the same thing. Well, nothing's happening. I can relax. Why do you think everybody wants a date? They want a date so they can go back to sleep. Anybody who looks for a date is going to push the button on the alarm clock and go back to sleep. They're going to go back to sleep. Every hour is precious. And when it becomes, listen, I'm trying to stress to you, when it becomes real. When it becomes real, it's too late. Do you understand that? When it becomes physically real, it's too late. There's no more prep time. Now you're in the middle of it. You can only prepare for things before it happens. Once it begins to take effect, you cannot prepare. You have to utilize what you have. Can you not see the mercy and the grace upon our lives? All this time people complain, well, nothing has happened yet. You better thank God nothing has happened yet in your life. But that's not for everybody. Brutal killings, rapes, murders, just you name it, every second of every day. Tens of thousands go missing every single month. No trace of them whatsoever. And you're telling me nothing has happened yet, and you're looking for a date so you can spend time at a bar a little bit longer? You're looking for a date so that you can strategically set up a time when you're going to conform to the word of the Lord? And you refuse to do it today? That's why you look for a date? To that person he will say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity, I never knew you. Anyone who seeks a sign is truly a wicked generation. It's a wicked generation because they don't want to stay prepared. They want a warning so they can get rid of all their trash and then sit up straight like they acted good all along. Like a bad student always wants to know when the teacher's coming back. But the good student is preoccupied with their work. The bad student is peeking all the time. Is the teacher coming? You only peek for the teacher when you're doing something wrong. You only peeked for your parents when you were doing something wrong. Because when you're doing something right, you're in a different mindset. The people who look for a sign are doing something wrong. Jesus said that, not me. He said it's a wicked generation that seeks for a sign. And many people still can't comprehend that. We need to realize that the Father's in full control, that we are His children, and we have no more time.
Dark skies and in some rain, obviously, with the windshield wipers going. Let's hope that they're not doing what we call sometimes entering the bear's cage, coming out of the rain right into a rain-wrapped tornado at this point.
Members of the District of Columbia National Guard deployed to support government officials and district residents during Winter Storm Jonas. Soldiers and airmen dispatched to various locations around D.C., providing support using military vehicles to transport supplies and essential personnel. The district guardsmen also helped emergency response vehicles and civilians trapped in the
that left a trail of debris in the city of Quishigaya. Video footage shows what appears to be a tornado. Firefighters and police say the powerful winds ripped through parts of the city and damaged more than 300 buildings.
To 100 meters across, it was one of the largest tornadoes ever in Japan.
Scientists at Japan's meteorological agency have surveyed the damage. They've determined the tornado's strength. They say it measured 1 or higher on a scale between 0 and 5. The scientists say a level 1 tornado packs winds of about 120 to 175 kilometers per hour.
The Vatican knows, and I have some local connections there that I know about the Vatican and what they're doing. The Fortune 100 companies, they're getting ready and being prepared. Creative forensics when it comes to secrets and how military intelligence knows about things before they happen. Because of what I do and what I do professionally, I interact with people involved with law enforcement, including the FBI. Would the federal government of the United States of America lie to you? Creative forensics. Of course they would, and they have for decades. Creative forensics. My first-hand awareness began in year 2000. Two different men, friends of mine, they're both researchers. They approached me and they said, John, there's this thing's going to happen. We're not sure about the date, but it's going to happen. When it does, there's going to be abrupt climate change. There's going to be 200-mile-an-hour wind. I need to find out if this is true. And my confidential source, a friend of mine, he says, "John, it's exactly what you said it is. It's coming, it's going to hit us, it's going to hit us hard. And there's going to be 200-mile-an-hour winds. And there's going to be massive tidal waves and earthquakes and all the rest of all the things that you said."
Scientists are telling us we're heading into a new ice age? What?
The Earth is warming. On what timescale? This year was the hottest year ever. Was that before or after NASA and the NOAA altered the temperature record to make recent years warmer?
Recent research, however, suggests that there is a possibility that this gradual global warming could lead to a relatively abrupt slowing of the ocean's thermohaline conveyor. That's the Gulf Stream, ladies and gentlemen, which could lead to harsher winter conditions, sharply reduced soil moisture, and more intense winds in certain regions that currently provide a significant fraction of the world's food production. With inadequate preparation, the result could be a significant drop in the human carrying capacity of the Earth's environment. That means people are going to die. That's what that means. What will be happening in the future with abrupt climate change? The science fiction is what's going to cause it. And the science fiction is human activity creating CO2 greenhouse gases. That's the science fiction. And quite frankly, because you can do this from your home if you've got internet access, there's buoys out there in the Atlantic that gives 24-hour, 7-day-a-week readings of the ocean temperature. And anybody can do this any place. You don't need to be on a little island off the coast of Scotland. And they're watching the ocean temperature. And then there's a dramatic drop in temperature on one buoy, then another buoy, and so forth. And what they're watching is the North Atlantic thermohaline conveyor, which is also called the Gulf Stream. Just a couple of years ago, there was an announcement that the Gulf Stream had slowed down by 30%. My private sources tell me it's been more than that.
ClimateGate was hype and it's been debunked. The UK Information Commissioner found the ClimateGate scientists guilty of breaking the law by hiding data from the public.
What we're going to learn today is known by the major world governments. I doubt the president of Zimbabwe knows what we're going to talk about, but the heads of England, Canada, United States, Russia, China, they all know, and they're making preparations. The Vatican knows, and I have some local connections there that I know about the Vatican and what they're doing. It's coming, it's going to hit us hard. And there's going to be 200-mile-an-hour winds, and there's going to be massive tidal waves and earthquakes and all the rest of all the things that you said. Because I did pretty quickly learn what would be causing the rising ocean levels and abrupt climate change. At the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks are one of the known safe havens. when all these events take place. If you want to get to the heart of a matter, that's the way it's done. You find witnesses who don't know each other that have the same information, and you interview them at different times, different places. On one of the breaks, I have a man walk up and introduce himself to me. He says, John, I'm in the insurance industry. And we've wondered for years, us in the insurance industry, why is there such a cluster of retired Navy people in the zip codes of the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks? Now I know. Now I got my answer. The Navy knows. Another pistol student of mine, a retired Navy guy, I said, what's the altitude of your new home? He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home. How many people can do that? Almost nobody. He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home in the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. How many planets are there in our solar system? 9? Okay. Announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena. Do a Google search. They did. Don't take my word for it. NASA announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena, 29th of July, 2005. Parade magazine and the Sunday newspaper. It was the front cover of the January 15th, 2006 edition.
Models project a temperature increase of over 2 degrees this century, and these same models overestimated warming over the past 15 years by 400%.
After the NASA press announcement in July of 2005, he calls me up and he says, John, you're not crazy. There really is a 10th planet. NASA said so. I said, thank you very much. There has to be a cause. The cause is the 10th planet. Now, what NASA is calling the 10th planet is not the 10th planet we're concerned about. It's the 10th planet that's referred to in the Bible, also called wormwood. The closer you are to the current equator, whatever that might be, the better off you are when these things happen, if there's a pole shift, because your climate's not going to change all that much. If you're in Miami, Florida, and we have a 20-degree pole shift, you're not going to end up with a really, really bad winter. You're going to have a mild winter. But if you're in Maine, and you got a 20-degree pole shift, you could end up with the weather of Siberia real easy. And when this 10th planet comes through our solar system every 3,600 years, it just causes severe problems on our planet. Interacting with the Earth electrically and with gravity both.
Climate denial is a well-funded conspiracy. Actually, the real money is to be made in global warming alarmism.
Professor James McCanning, who is a credentialed scientist, has written a number of books on this. He's a real astrophysical scientist, and he knows about this stuff. I'm a private detective and a researcher. I'm not a scientist. But I can tell you what the scientists say, because I've read their books. And I can tell you what Dr. Velikovsky said, because I've read his books. And I can tell you what the Bible says, because I've read the Bible. And all these things are true, and all these things are in the process of happening right now. Where is all this water going to come from? Up until last year, I was thinking, oh, melting ice at Antarctica, melting ice at Greenland. But that, how could it melt that fast? Well, it can't melt that fast, even with what we're going through. It turns out the answer was right in front of me all the time. There is a bulge of water at the equator. It turns out that sea level varies as much as 494 feet up and down from that rock in Cornwall, England. Now that's like a 50-story building. I mean, it's a lot of water. And there's a bulge of literally millions of cubic miles, 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile, cubic miles, millions of cubic miles of water bulge at the equator of this planet. It wasn't common knowledge for John Moore, I found out. It's not common knowledge for most people. It's held in place by two things, the rotation of the Earth and gravity. Anything that changes our true north, our pole, by more than just a couple of degrees will cause that water to be disrupted. And there's a technical term for it, slosh. And there's records locked up in bones and stone of this having happened in the past. Velikovsky talked about it extensively in his books. Now, from Washington, D.C. to Boston is basically one big city. All that's going to be gone. going down the coast to Atlanta and down to Florida. Florida, the highest point in Florida is on the Panhandle, 55 feet above sea level. Florida's finished, except for a small part of the isthmus, maybe, and that's a big maybe. Gulf Coast, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi are pretty much going to be gone. In fact, the new mouth of the Mississippi will be at the current Arkansas-Louisiana state line, a couple hundred miles up from where it is right now. Going down around the coast of Texas, Texas will take damage about 100 miles inland. California will take damage 25 to 100 miles inland, depending on a couple of things, the level of the altitude above sea level and seismic activity. On up the west coast to Oregon and Seattle, all coastal areas being damaged 50 to 100 miles inland. And once again, seismic activity is going to play a big role in what happens. Locally in the Midwest, we have something called the New Madrid seismic zone. Once the Mississippi River becomes 50 to 100 miles wide, the U.S. Navy, not John Moore, the U.S. Navy says it will trigger at least 3 9-point+ earthquakes on the New Madrid seismic zone. Southern Illinois will basically be one large swamp. In fact, Southern Illinois is already pretty swampy. If you fly over the Mississippi River right now, you can see where the river used to be. You can see where its banks were at one time. A much, much larger river than it is now.
It's from Time Magazine, Monday, June 24th, 1974.
Yes, to quote the title of Penn and Teller's TV series, this video will look at bullshit, or to put it more politely, urban myths that have grown up around the subject of climate change.
Now, the real timeline. These relocations, which you could call evacuations, are due to have everybody who's part of continuity of government planning. It's not all federal employees. If you work for Health and Human Services, you're toast. There's no place waiting for you in Denver. People in the intelligence agencies, people in certain parts of the military, not all the military. The scientists, the engineers, the doctors that they want to have in these shelters. These shelters are literally hundreds of millions of your tax dollars where people can live and work and have hot showers and pizzas and video movies for years without ever leaving the place and be quite comfortable. And then what we sometimes refer to as a New World Order, which will be basically corporations running everything, banks and corporations, they fully expect to come out on the other side of this intact. The agendas of the people that control the world, the international bankers and the Fortune 500 and so forth, is to have a planet with far less people on it than there is now, either inadvertently through these earth changes or by design, through World War III, a flu pandemic, or severe economic collapse leading to societal disruption, or all three happening at the same time. What we're living in right now is phase one. Phase one is where normal commerce takes place. We can have our careers, interact with our families and our social events that we normally do, and life appears to be normal. The powers that be are using phase one to finish their final preparations. Phase two will be when these earth changes events, abrupt climate change, bizarre weather, earthquakes, tidal waves, all become so numerous that they become daily news. In fact, when I meet people out in the street, almost everybody comments on how bizarre the weather has become. And that's pretty much a topic of daily discussion. The government, the powers that be, will claim that these bizarre weather-related events are related to global warming. And when they're happening, that we need to start cutting back on our creation of CO2 greenhouse gases. As these events become more severe, you're going to hear more and more men with lab coats from NASA talking about global warming being caused by human activity and that it will be better and everything's going to be okay. So you can go back to your baseball games and go back to work Monday morning. Things are going to be fine. That's phase two.
As I looked at the science of climate change and real research done by experts on both sides of the issue. Now it's the turn of the amateurs. Now, I love Penn and Teller, and I appreciate that bullshit is supposed to be entertainment. But this claim also pops up in internet blogs and even mainstream media.
This is Time magazine in 1975. Another ice age is coming. We're all going to die.
And this is Senator James Inhofe, who not only cites Time, but also this 1975 story in Newsweek. George Will cites a 1975 article in the New York Times. And Michael Crichton makes the claim on page 315 of his book, State of Fear. In the 1970s, he writes, all the climate scientists believed an ice age was coming. But these are all popular newspapers, magazines, and novels, not scientific journals.
It's from Time magazine.
So what, Penn? Time magazine isn't peer-reviewed. It's just as capable of misreporting and sensationalizing stories as any other magazine. Don't just take my word for it. Read the story and tell me exactly where this claim about an ice age comes from. 5 people, all scientists, were named in the story. They all agreed that the Earth had been cooling. Sure, that was evident from the temperature data. But not one of them substantiated Time's line of an impending ice age. And one of them even said the period of cooling was about to end. So where did Time get the idea an ice age was coming? Well, the magazine had to resort to an old journalist trick of inventing a pack of unnamed and unquoted sources. Climatological Cassandras are becoming increasingly apprehensive. That may be, but why couldn't Time magazine find one of these climatological Cassandras? Perhaps because they weren't as numerous as the headline and the hype suggest. The question is, how many climatologists in the 1970s did accept this conclusion of a coming ice age? If you want to find out, it's no good thumbing through Time and Newsweek. Boring as it sounds, you have to look at the scientific literature.
Phase 3 will be a relatively short period of time. It may be a matter of a few days, maybe a week. It won't be long. At some point, people will realize that things are very strange and very dangerous, and they'll start doing things they normally wouldn't do. Most men, and it's mostly men because of the nature of the work they do, some women, who know about what we're talking about today, just simply go about their lives and keep quiet about it. They're not public speakers. They take care of their family, they take care of themselves, and the rest of you are on your own. Phase 4 will be the end of the world as we know it. Once these oceans come up, the infrastructure that supports normal human activity will be wiped out. The housing where 100 million people live will be damaged and or destroyed. The potable water that these people rely on will no longer be potable. The food that they rely on to eat will no longer be available. It will not be a pretty picture. Martial law will be instituted probably before that, which brings to mind these other scenarios. What are you looking at? You're looking at curfews. The curfew could be from 10 o'clock at night to 6 a.m. The curfew could be 24 hours a day. Restrictions of sales of firearms, ammunition, and alcohol. Rationing of fuel, rationing of food, potable water rationing, possibly rationing of electricity. We've seen that in Iraq a lot, depending on what's going on. Martial law is not a fun thing to be part of or live under, even if you're part of the occupying force, because it changes your life. And the Navy says these oceans will come up over a period of about 30 days. Once these events get in motion, these water levels, these oceans, these tsunamis, tidal waves will take place over a period of about 1 month. Altitude. The Navy says that everything 100 feet sea level and below will be completely destroyed. The Navy says everything at 400 feet and below is at risk of being damaged and or destroyed. But there's more to this. There's how close you are to densely populated areas. Now, the Appalachian Mountains, for example, in North Carolina and so forth, would be highly desirable places to be if it wasn't for being so close to literally tens of million people who are going to be hungry and without potable water and without electricity. That's what makes those areas undesirable, even though they will be safe in terms of geology and rising ocean levels. Dollars, if you call a dollar up value for future use, possibly gold coins, possibly silver coins, to store up a lot of value in a compact area, compact space. Before, however, I would get gold coins or silver coins, I think I would look at other aspects of preparedness. That's why I want to focus on the final part of this presentation is preparedness. So let's look at the stepping stones, the building blocks of preparedness. First of all, and most important, is spiritual preparedness. That our American POWs who were incarcerated in POW camps in World War II, our American POWs who had strong spiritual beliefs, were far more likely to survive what went on in these POW camps than those who did not. Eating the same food, having the same medical attention, doing the same work, wearing the same clothes, living in the same buildings. Those who had a strong spiritual foundation were far more likely to survive those conditions. We know that for a fact. It's not my job to tell you what your spiritual beliefs should be. My job is to tell you need to have strong spiritual beliefs, whatever that might be for you. Next comes skills. The skills of a farmer, a gardener. You will be growing your own food. The skills of a paramedic. In a future where things no longer work like we're used to, you're going to be your own paramedic, or you're going to sit there and watch your loved one bleed to death from a chainsaw accident or whatever it might be. An EMT course is 1 semester at your local junior college, maybe $100, $200, and you'll know more about emergency medical matters than 99% of the people in this country. 1 semester at your local junior college. You don't need to worry about passing a test unless you intend to be a paramedic or an EMT. You don't need to worry about taking a test at all. You want to learn the skills, and you want to get a kit equal to your skill level. Now, the paramedic training is 3 more semesters of college on top of that first one, and then you'll have a skill level almost equal to a medical doctor when it comes to emergency medical treatment. The skills of a ham radio operator. I've been in places, I've been in combat, and I know what it's like not to know what's going on. Being able to instantly and effectively communicate with your friends and loved ones, and we found this out during Hurricane Katrina, two-way radio communication that you control could mean the difference between life and death. In Hurricane Katrina, it was a matter of life and death for many people. The ability to communicate with their loved ones, let them know they were okay, ask for help, or be able to give help. The skills of a backpacker, being able to carry everything you need on your back, your shelter, your clothing, your hygiene needs. Being able to clean yourself out in the field, prepare food out in the field, and do so in a manner that doesn't make you sick. Being able to take water out of a stream and filter it so you can drink it without getting sick. All the things that a backpacker knows, the skills of a soldier. In a severe crisis like Hurricane Katrina, for example, you're your own cop, you're your own soldier, or nobody's protected. That's what it comes down to. You become your own soldier, you become your own police officer, and you protect your loved ones because of these skills that you learn. Animal husbandry. In a severe long-term crisis, having goats and sheep and chickens and ducks and rabbits can mean the difference between a fairly good and healthy diet and one that's terribly lacking in protein. It's extremely difficult to get the protein you need from an all-vegetable diet. Extremely difficult. The skills of a carpenter, of an electrician, of a plumber. Things that we may call up a professional to do now, you will be on your own to make these repairs. The skills of an automobile mechanic. All these skills take years to learn, and you can't learn them out of a book, at least not and be very effective. There's some things you can learn out of a book, but without practical application, you're just guessing at how this stuff works.
The first thing you notice is an admission from a lot of scientific bodies that there was great uncertainty about the climate in the 1970s. Okay, but was there any kind of consensus? Well, if all or most climate scientists were predicting another ice age back in the 1970s, there should be lots of scientific papers from that time supporting that conclusion. After all, there are hundreds of scientific papers today supporting anthropogenic climate change. A review published in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society looked at the scientific literature rather than the popular press. 3 climatologists searched scientific journals between 1965 and 1979, and yes, they found 7 papers predicting not an ice age, but global cooling. The only problem is, they also found 44 articles predicting global warming. Even though the world was cooling in the 1970s and had been for 3 decades, even so, 6 times as many climatologists predicted that the danger was global warming, not global cooling. For the purposes of propagating an urban myth, the claim about a consensus on an imminent ice age simply does the rounds unchecked, even when it's dressed up as science.
I mentioned Wisconsin will be gone. The Great Lakes will become one vast inland sea joining up with Hudson Bay up in Canada. That's what the Navy says. Gone. Wisconsin's gone. It's finished. There's not going to be any more Wisconsin. Florida's gone. Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, finished, gone. Some science in there, some science fiction. The science is about what will happen in the future. Abrupt climate change.